I was lucky to be raised, my brothers and me, by two loving, hardworking parents. My mother, a child of 7 brothers and sisters, was raised on a farm in Huntsville, Alabama. Big, strapping family, loving family. My father, not so much. His mother was illiterate. She lived off a series of men, each one more irresponsible than the other. My dad never met his biological father. My last name, Elder, is not the name of my dad's biological father. He never met him. Elder was the man in my dad's life the longest. He was an alcoholic who, when he worked, would bring the money home, give it to his mother for her to keep, because he knew that he would drink it away. Come Wednesday, he'd want the money. If she wouldn't give it to him, he'd beat the crap out of her. When my dad tried to stop it, he beat the crap out of my dad. Now my dad is 13 years old. He comes home from school. He starts quarreling with his mom's then boyfriend. Elder was long gone. The mother sides with the boyfriend, throws my father out of the house, never to return. You're talking about a black boy, Athens, Georgia, Jim Crow South at the beginning of the Great Depression. As my dad was leaving the house, his mom stood on the front porch and yelled at him and said, "You'll be back. Either that or you'll be in a cemetery or in a penitentiary." My dad walked down the road, picked up trash, did anything he could to earn money. Ultimately, he became a Pullman porter on the trains. They were the largest private employer of blacks in those days. And my dad traveled to a place called California, a city called Los Angeles, and he was blown away. You could walk through the front door of a restaurant and get served. He always had packages of crackers and tin cans of tuna because he never knew in the South whether he'd be able to get a meal. So my dad made a mental note, maybe someday I'll relocate to California. Pearl Harbor, my dad joined the Marines. Anybody who knows a Marine or is a Marine knows what I'm going to say. I asked my dad why. He said 2 reasons. 1, they go where the action is, and 2, I love the uniforms. My dad was stationed on the island of Guam, where there was heavy fighting, as you know. He was a staff sergeant in charge of cooking for the colored soldiers. He got out of the service, went back to the South, Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he met and married my mom, to get him a job as a short order cook. He goes to restaurant after restaurant after restaurant, and he's told, "Pardon me, we don't hire niggers." My dad went to an unemployment office. The lady says, "You went through the wrong door." My dad goes out to the hall, sees colored only, goes to that door to the very same lady who sent him out. She just wanted him to know what the rules were. Came home, he told my mother, "This is bull. I'm going to LA where I was before the war. Get me a job as a cook and I'll send for you." Goes out to LA, walks around, and he's told, "I'm sorry, you don't have any references." My dad said, "I need references to make ham and eggs?" He offered to work for free for a reference. They wouldn't even do that. He was treated the same way in LA as he was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, maybe a little more genteel. He goes to an unemployment office, this time just one door. Lady says, "I have nothing." My dad said, "What time do you open?" She says, 9. "What time do you close?" She says, 5. My dad said, "I'll be sitting in that chair till you find something." My dad sat in the chair for a whole day, came back the next day, sat there for half a day. She calls him up. "I've got something. I don't know whether you're going to want it." My dad said, "Of course I'm going to want it. I'm starting a family. What is it?" She says, "It's a job cleaning toilets at Nabisco brand bread." My dad did that for over 10 years, full-time, took a second full-time job at another bread company, also cleaning toilets, cooked for a family on the weekend because he wanted my mom to be a stay-at-home mom, which he was until the youngest of us was in middle school. And he went to night school to get his GED. When he got his GED, he went to night school to learn how to operate a small restaurant. Now he's 47 years old, having saved his nickels and dimes, starts a small restaurant near downtown LA. When my dad retired well into his 80s, he owned the restaurant, property next door, plus a house that is still in our family. Not too shabby for an 8th grade dropout. My dad was a lifelong Republican. My mother was a lifelong Democrat. Oh, to be a fly on the wall to hear some of their arguments over the kitchen table. But nobody called anybody a fascist. Nobody called anybody a Nazi. Nobody said you only care about the rich, you don't care about the poor. They argued civilly but respectfully. My dad said this about Democrats. Democrats want to give you something for nothing. When you try and get something for nothing, you almost always end up getting nothing for something. When I ran for governor of California, Joe Biden flew in and said, "Larry Elder is the closest thing to a Donald Trump clone as I've ever seen." Now, was I supposed to be insulted or flattered? To that charge, I plead guilty. Why then am I running? Thank you. You're cutting it in my time. Why then am I running? Because there are several issues that our side is not talking about, if at all. Number one, the most important domestic problem we have in America, far and away, nothing else is even close, the epidemic of fatherlessness. 40% of American kids enter the world today without a father in the home, married to the mother, up almost threefold from 1965. 70% of black kids now enter the world without a father in the home, married to the mother, up from 25% back in 1965. Now 25% of white kids enter the world without a father in the home, married to the mother. And the stats are clear. Even Barack Obama once quoted them. A kid raised without a father is 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. What's happened? A Democrat named Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty, and since then we have incentivized women to marry the government and incentivized men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. The other side does not talk about it because they caused it. Our side does not talk about it for fear of being called systemically racist if you're white, or being called the black face of white supremacy, as the LA Times called me, if you're black. The other big issue is the complete and total disaster known as urban education K through 12, where, just to pick 2 cities, Baltimore, 13 public high schools where 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Chicago, 53 government schools, 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Nationwide, according to the National Report Card, 85% of black 8th graders, these are 13-year-old kids, can neither read nor do math at grade level. Half can't even do basic reading, which means a substantial percentage of black kids in America are functionally illiterate, yet the Democratic Party opposes school choice, even as the party elites, whether it's Barack Obama or Joe Biden or Gavin Newsom, send their own kids to private school. It is an outrage. And then there is the lie that America remains systemically racist. It's not just a lie that's driving things like reparations, which is the extraction of money from people who were never slave owners to be given to people who were never slaves. It's also driving things like race-based preferences, diversity, equity, inclusion, which is the very opposite of what MLK wanted. He wanted a colorblind society, not a color-coordinated one. It's also a lie that's getting people killed. How so? It's called the George Floyd effect, or the Ferguson effect. That's a phenomenon of cops pulling back from doing their normal proactive policing for fear that they're going to be called systemically racist. As a result, there are thousands of what one data scientist at Thomson Reuters called excess deaths that have taken place in the last several years, people who otherwise would be alive if the police were doing their normal proactive policing. And the majority of these so-called excess deaths are the very black and brown people that people on the left purport to care about. No matter who you want, if I can put these issues front and center, the lie that America remains systemically racist, the need for school choice, and the epidemic of fatherlessness, if I can put these issues front and center along with a couple of others, then I feel that I've given back to my party, and more importantly, I will feel that I've given back to my country. I've written a book called As Goes California, My Mission to Rescue the Golden State and Save the Nation. As you can see, my goals are modest. I talk about the disaster known as California and how it can affect all the rest of the country. I need 40,000 individual donors in order to qualify for that first debate next month in Milwaukee. You can donate as little as $1. Just go to my website, larryelder.com. And when I get up there on that debate stage and I can put these issues that I mentioned front and center, epidemic of fatherlessness, the need for school choice, the lie that America is systemically racist, the need for an amendment to the Constitution to fix spending to a certain percentage of the GDP, otherwise both parties are going to continue to spend. If I can put these issues front and center, then I will feel that I've given back to my country. My father, as I mentioned, was a World War II vet. My older brother, Kirk, was a Vietnam-era vet. My little brother, Dennis, served in the Army. I'm the only one in my family who didn't serve. My mother was a clerk typist for the War Department in Washington, D.C. I've never felt good about that. This is my opportunity. I know it's not the same thing to give back to a country that's been so good to me, to my family, and in my opinion, to the world. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you.